precipice of something desperately exciting.
Years from now, we will be judged by what we do in this moment.
No solution. Institution. Electrocution.
When I first came across this series advertised on Netflix, my immediate assumption was that this would be yet another Metallica documentary. And I like Metallica. But then I noticed the costumes, the set design, that classic and cliche slogan, based on real events. And upon a further glance, it quickly became clear that this was the sort of series that would have me hooked from the start. Regarding the title, that just might be the extent of my criticism for the show. I mean, how could anyone come up with a more contrary title for a show that was about an individual who suffered a grueling and snail-like demise from sepsis? Oh, and with only wishing for more. And I do get it, the budgetary constraints, the risk to maintain a healthy pace.
I must admit it's strange to be received this way on the front porch of a politician.
But I just wasn't satisfied. I wanted more. What is it to say? It's an interesting short series that explores the rise and demise, spoilers, of the 20th President of the United States of America, that being a brief biopic about James Abraham Garfield and his assassin Charles Julius Guiteau. In earnest, and prior to the Netflix show, my own knowledge on the life and contributions of James A. Garfield was notably limited, aside from his appearance in an episode of American Dad, where he was resurrected by the CIA and developed an unhealthy obsession for orange soda.
This concoction I hold in my hand indicates the exact moment where man has triumphed over God!
I knew that he became president briefly following Rutherford B. Hayes and was then assassinated by Charles J. Guiteau. I was also familiar with the preservation of Guiteau's brain and of Garfield's service from his first battle in command, where he defeated Confederate General Humphrey Marshall at the Battle of Middle Creek, then to Shiloh, and as the Chief of Staff to William Stark Rosecrans and the Army of the Cumberland. And that just about does it. To the performances, and while there wasn't quite the standout to the level of Ethan Hawke's transformation into becoming the abolitionist John Brown, both Michael Shannon and Matthew McFadden are solid as James Garfield and Charles Guiteau respectively. And there are strong supporting performances from Nick Offerman as Chester Arthur, Bradley Whitford as James Blaine, and Shea Wiggum as Roscoe Conkling. It is worth noting that the story about James Garfield, at least for me, was more compelling than that of Guiteau. While this depiction of Garfield might be a tad too pristine, I'm reminded of the all-too-perfect portrayal of Jackson by Lang in Gods and Generals. I enjoyed the politicking, the intrigue, the clashes of ideology, the values, and the exploration of corruption. The Charles Guiteau story is a typical narrative of a hapless individual with delusions of grandeur.
Who is this man?
Hell-bent on obtaining the respect and recognition of society for his perceived contributions. Fueled by envy, believing he'd been overlooked for what he was owed, and then seeking justification for outright murder upon the misguided crutch of saving the Republic, absolving himself of any wrongdoing through the illusion that this deed was of divine intervention.
So I leave my justification to God and the American people.
Still, the show maintains a healthy pace, and I never found myself bored. The show also keeps a solid balance between its weaving narratives from the very beginning and up to the final conclusive episode. As I mentioned before, and as an aside from what I would consider quite a weak title, my biggest problem was I only wanted more. That's a good thing. Specifically, and with respect to James Garfield's story, instead of the brief flashbacks to Garfield's service in the war, it would have been interesting if they introduced William Stark Rosecrans to explore their views of the war and differences in ideology, Rosecrans having previously been aligned with the Democrats and then developing a more idealistic view, and when compared to Garfield's pragmatism, how their friendship would develop and then become strained after Chickamauga, then how Rosecrans would come to resent Garfield upon also vying for the Republican nomination in 1880. Further, there could have been the introduction of Hancock, the superb, how he would contest Garfield in 1880 as the Democrat candidate, and with a more conservative worldview, how he supported the end of Reconstruction and the removal of federal troops from the South. At any rate, and with the likely consideration of the budget and with where the focus resided, these omissions do not hamper what we received. Death by Lightning was a well-put-together series, with compelling performances, an interesting history to explore as its backbone, with quality production values where there's no bogging down of the narrative, and holds of strong, intriguing themes. It is an enjoyable, educational, even inspiring effort, and for those with an enthusiasm for history, it is not one to overlook.